I wanted to start my talk actually with a recent image from space that I really love. It's this image here. And I love this image so much because it's very nebulous and it looks like it's very far away in outer space and kind of almost artistic in a way. But what we're looking at actually is our own neighborhood. This is the Milky Way galaxy that we're seeing through this image. And I like it because when we typically think of what the Milky Way galaxy looks like, we typically think it looks something like this, a fairly simple spiral structure. But in reality, it looks something a bit more nebulous in a way when we're able to actually see it. And we're able to actually see it through a space telescope called the Spitzer Space Telescope, which is one of my favorite space probes. And the Spitzer Space Telescope essentially trails behind the Earth. So it's in a heliocentric orbit. It orbits the sun. And it trails behind the Earth. And so in those pictures, you can't actually see where Earth is in the galaxy. And that's because it's very much taking a picture of the galaxy from the viewpoint of Earth. But the reason why Spitzer Space Telescope can get this gorgeous image of the Milky Way galaxy and really show us what our own galaxy looks like for the first time is because it uses infrared. And so it's able to peer past all the space dust and space gas out there and get these gorgeous images of what our own galaxy looks like. The thing I think that I love so much about these images is just how it shows us how little it is that we know still about space exploration. So I'm Ariel Waldman. I am about 27,000 light years away from all of that. Those images are very much pointed towards the center of our galaxy, which is about 27,000 light years away. And the thing that I also find interesting about those images is sort of how we've come to know our own galaxy. This image here is an image created by William Herschel in 1785 of, he tried to draw essentially what the shape of the galaxy, of our own galaxy looked like. And so this was his attempt at drawing what the Milky Way galaxy looked like based on a bunch of star observations. And so if you can actually see, it's very faint, but a bold star in the middle there, that's where he thought Earth was. We now know, of course, that Earth is not in the center of our Milky Way galaxy. We're more in the suburbs, which is a very good thing because someone's laughing because we might be dead if we were in the center of our Milky Way galaxy. You're ahead of me. Yeah, it's a very turbulent place in the center of galaxies. And so it's kind of good that we're not where William Herschel thought we were. Also interesting because it hasn't even been 100 years since we knew of any other galaxies in our universe other than our own. In 1924, Edwin Hubble was looking at a blob in the sky and was able to determine that that blob in the sky wasn't just some nebula or some stuff at the edge of our own galaxy, but it was a galaxy unto itself. So 100 years ago, we thought the entire universe was the Milky Way galaxy, and that, you know, maybe there were some nebulas and other things at the edges of our galaxy, but we were it. So that blob that he was looking at in the sky was this. This is, at the time, it was called the Andromeda Nebula. We now know it's the Andromeda Galaxy. Also interesting because 1,000 years before, in 964, we have the very first known depiction of the Andromeda Galaxy. These are constellations, Arabic constellations, and so you can see a person and a fish, and at the mouth of the fish, you can see a little cloud. And that little cloud is the first known depiction of the Andromeda Galaxy. So it took us about 1,000 years from seeing the Andromeda Galaxy to realizing it actually was a galaxy. Also interesting because many of us as nerds are very familiar with the Andromeda Galaxy as well. OSX famously shipped with Andromeda Galaxy as a default background. So you can go to sleep knowing that you've spent a lot of time looking at the very same thing that Edwin Hubble has spent a lot of time looking at. But as I said, what I love so much about these sorts of images is how it shows how much there is that's kind of unknown in our universe and in space exploration. And one of my most favorite unknown things in space exploration is black holes. And black holes are really interesting because they have this just terrible reputation of being these things that gobble up planets and stars and maybe even entire galaxies and are seen as these very destructive forces of nature. And while that's very true, there's also sort of an opposite side to black holes. They're also very creative in a sense. And this is because black holes, when they gobble up a lot of things like planets or stars, they often take in more than they can chew. And when they take in more than they can chew, they vomit it back out into the universe very violently in the form of mixed up space dust and space gas. And that mixed up space dust and space gas may actually go on to create entirely new stars and planets and a bunch of other things in our universe. So there are these kind of creative forces of nature. And I get a little bit sad when they get a bad reputation because they do a lot of good in addition to doing some evil, I guess. Also kind of good because at the center of our Milky Way galaxy, there is a supermassive black hole. As we know, with most galaxies, there are supermassive black holes. There are also as many as 100 million black holes across our entire galaxy. So it's kind of a good thing that they're not always evil, that they are actually creating things. So while we can't image a black hole because not even light itself can escape from a black hole, we can image a black hole's vomit. And that's what you're looking at here. This is a M83, not the band M83 if you're a hipster, but the galaxy M83. I like M83 anyway. But inside that circle there, you can see essentially the vomit of the black hole that's in galaxy M83. So to me, what I find so fascinating about black holes and why I like them so much is because they sort of sample things around them, mash them up, and then spit them back out to sort of create derivative works in our universe. And this is very much like hacking to me. You know, it's about sampling things around you, mashing them up, and creating sparks for future things to happen. And in a sense, it was sort of a spark that led me to where I am today. So I actually don't have a background in science whatsoever. My degree is in graphic design, print graphic design, so I didn't really see that one coming. I like design, but my degree is in graphic design, and I had worked at an ad agency for a number of years. But back in 2008, I had just moved to San Francisco recently, and I was watching a documentary called When We Left Earth. Have any of you watched this documentary? A few of you. Okay. I really like this documentary if you haven't seen it. It's essentially a documentary about NASA during the early days trying to figure out how to send someone into space. And I found this documentary so incredibly inspiring that I decided to send someone at NASA an email saying that I was a huge fan of what they were doing. And if they ever needed someone like me, someone without any science or space background whatsoever, that I was here. And it was kind of a geeky fangirl moment. I didn't really expect to hear back from them, but serendipitously, I was able to get a job at NASA from that email. And it completely changed my life, and it was really amazing. I wanted to share with you actually a clip from this documentary that might better explain why I became so inspired to actually randomly email NASA on a whim.
To be launch a man into Earth orbit.
Spacecraft, we did nothing about orbits. I saw a lot of rockets launched. Somewhere between 30 and 40%. A lot of them came up off the pad and went the opposite direction. Some of them got halfway off the pad, and some of them got to 10,000 feet and turned the other way and blew up.
The whole thing crumbled and blew up. Like an atomic bomb with all those kids. Gas spots. Straight looking at their eyes. This thing, each other decided we went back to engineers.
So that's why I love so much about this documentary. It actually reminded me always of this image here. But I just loved it because, they were talking about, they didn't know anything about spacecrafts or orbits or any of that. And I'm watching this going like, well, I don't know anything about space exploration. I want to work at NASA. That sounds awesome. And so it was kind of a shift of, from viewing people as rocket scientists to kind of viewing them as more space hackers, that they were figuring it out as they went along. In the 1960s, especially, the average age at NASA was 26. It's now around 49. So NASA has changed a bit, but my experience there was no less exciting. I got to learn about, robots and dark matter and all these great things. But one of the most important things that I ended up learning while I was at NASA was that I didn't need to work at NASA to explore space. And so I left. And I created spacehack.org, which is a directory of ways to participate in space exploration. So these are things you can do with or without a formal science background to actively contribute to space exploration and scientific discovery. So some of the things on spacehack.org are projects like the Austrian Space Forum. The Austrian Space Forum is a pretty cool organization. It's very open source-esque, I guess is the way to refer to it. Essentially, they are trying to create research help anyone who might one day go to Mars. So instead of trying to pick who's going to go to Mars first and when, they just want to create as much research as they can to be beneficial to whoever does one day go to Mars. So they do things like digging through ice caves in Austria to sort of test out different tools and different materials to see how they might work in Martian-like conditions. The thing that's cool about the Austrian Space Forum is that they really need help from all different types. They really need help people, grounds to produce a huge body of research. So if you're a lawyer, they definitely need people to figure out like how laws might interact with exploring Mars. If you're a web developer, they can certainly use your help. All different types of people, pretty much you name it, they are looking for a lot of help. There's other cool projects like this is Milky Way project, which essentially is, kind of a basic thing where you analyze a lot of pictures, and by doing so, you can help classify different types of stars and sort of help build up a body of research for how stars form in our galaxy. The Milky Way project actually utilizes data from the Spitzer Space Telescope, which was the telescope I was showing you at the beginning. There's also a really cool one where you can actually search for discovering new black holes, which is really awesome. It's called Galaxy Zoo Radio. So this is totally something where you just try and spot black holes by looking at either accretion disks or essentially black hole vomit, like I was talking about, and try and find black holes that way. Another cool project that came around a little while ago was around dark matter. And dark matter is a really interesting thing because it's essentially a placeholder name. Essentially, we can't see dark matter, but we can measure the effects of it. And dark matter isn't something that's uniform. Dark matter is something where it actually clumps around galaxies. So this image here is actually a depiction of some data around how dark matter affects different galaxies. And as you can see, it's more globular. Also, dark matter is a pretty cool thing because when we look at galaxies and we see that they're held together, we can't actually see enough mass to explain how these galaxies are held together. And so we give this the placeholder name of dark matter. There's a lot of people searching for what dark matter exactly is. We haven't found it yet, so it's still kind of a placeholder name. But we do need algorithms for how to detect the effects of dark matter. And so a little while ago, there was a competition to essentially create better algorithms for detecting the effects of dark matter. And one of the best algorithms that came out from this competition was someone who was a glaciologist. And they were using the same algorithm that they were using to essentially detect the edges of glaciers in satellite imagery. And they applied that towards dark matter. And it actually beat out all the previous algorithms for dark matter, which is kind of amazing. Just a cool collaboration. So dark matter is a good reminder of that we are kind of the et cetera in the universe. This is a pie chart of all the energy and matter in the universe. And as you can see, around 27% is dark matter, a whole lot is dark energy, and the rest, less than 5%, is all ordinary matter. That pretty much means everything that you can see, every planet you could ever see, everything on this planet you could ever see, all makes up less than 5% of the entire universe. And a lot of that ordinary matter comes from another thing that I love in space exploration, which is supernovas. And supernovas are not only beautiful, but also really fascinating in that pretty much everything almost everything that we know of comes from supernovas. Essentially, supernovas are stars that end up exploding, and they end up fusing together a lot of the elements that we see today. So pretty much all heavy elements that, other than hydrogen, have come from supernovas. So you might remember Carl Sagan telling you, depending on your age, that you are made of star stuff, but if you want to be really geeky about it, you are only 93% star stuff by weight. The rest of you, so the 7%, is actually hydrogen, which technically existed before stars. So if one of your friends starts being a bit of a jerk and saying, well, we're all made of star stuff, you can knock them down a bit and say, well, you're only 93% star stuff, and you will be correct. I don't know if you have as geeky of friends as I do. So how we actually detect a lot of this star stuff here on Earth is really fascinating to me as well. This is a really cool observatory in Antarctica called IceCube. And the IceCube Observatory is essentially an observatory for detecting neutrinos, which are oftentimes emitted from supernovas. I produced a video today about neutrinos, and I feel compelled to also explain that at any given point, there are tens of trillions of neutrinos going through you at this second, and this second, and this second, and that also neutrinos are being created out of your bananas and avocados because the potassium in them creates sort of a natural radioactivity, and that creates neutrinos. So neutrinos are kind of like our little invisible friends that never wave hello to us, in a sense. So IceCube is this great neutrino detector at the South Pole, and it's a whole cubic kilometer of ice. And embedded in this entire cubic kilometer of ice are 5,000 optical sensors. You can see in this diagram, this is the size of it compared to the Eiffel Tower. At the very top, you can see that building I was just showing you, how it sits on top of this detector. So these optical sensors, what they're doing in this ice is essentially looking for blue flashes of light. And this is because when neutrinos are emitted from supernovas, or from other places even, when they interact with ice, they actually create a blue flash of light, and these optical sensors can actually sense that. So these are kind of what these little optical sensors look like. They're a pretty cool thing, but it's a pretty basic concept. Essentially, when a neutrino interacts with the ice, it can then get a depiction of it like this. So in a way, it's sort of scanning for parts from supernovas to hit Earth, and that's sort of a way that we can detect some of the star stuff here at home. Also a cool project that's sort of related, actually wanted to 3D scan supernovas. And so 3D scanning supernovas is kind of a cool concept to me, because you can't necessarily take it like a Kinect and hold it up to the sky and hope to get a 3D scan of a supernova that way, although that would be really awesome. And you can't necessarily shrink a supernova down into the size of an MRI machine and get a 3D scan of it that way. But there was a group at Harvard who kind of did just that, in that they took MRI technology. Essentially, they took software that takes brain scans and turns those brain scans into sort of 3D fly-throughs. It's this software package called 3D Slicer. And 3D Slicer is an open source piece of software. And they took this technology and they fed supernova data through it, specifically supernova data from Cassiopeia A. And what they were able to do is get this really awesome 3D scan of a supernova. What's cool about this is that this is actually the very first 3D fly-through of a supernova remnant that was ever created. So this was actually out of a project from Harvard called the Astronomical Medicine Project, which sought to actually get collaboration between essentially the medicine department, the astronomical department, and kind of share data visualization tools. So collaborations like these are really fun and cool for how you can actually utilize data visualization that should be open to everyone, but oftentimes gets siphoned into a specific scientific discipline, and thus it's not really helping that many people. Other cool projects that I've been able to work on since creating spacehack.org, one of which is called NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts, or NIAC. And NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts is something where I'm on the external counsel for them, and they are, as you know, I'm biased, but they are essentially the coolest program at NASA that I could ever imagine. They essentially fund all the more science fiction, out there, futuristic ideas that could really be game changers in space exploration, but are actually credible research to do. So one of my favorite projects from NIAC is one called the COMET HITCHHIKER. And when I heard of the Comet Hitchhiker, at first I I thought, well, yeah, that's cool, but we've already got the space probe Rosetta that's at a comet. Why do we need another comet, space probe? What's interesting about that? I guess because I've become a jaded space geek, and who needs more comet explorers? I'm terrible. The concept for the Comet Hitchhiker is essentially a spacecraft that would go to a comet, harpoon into it, and then reel out a huge long reel and actually use the kinetic energy from the comet to travel this solar system twice as fast as any spacecraft that we currently have. So in a way, it's actually using a comet as a type of propulsion to go across the solar system in twice as fast as something like Voyager would go. So I love this concept because I don't see it a lot in science fiction or anything, and it's just an amazing sort of idea of using essentially natural celestial bodies as a type of propulsion for exploring the solar system that much faster. Cool projects. This one's very popular. This is essentially a submarine that would go to Titan, which is a moon that has a lot of methane on it, and actually be able to explore the moon through having a submarine-like concept. It says Kraken Mare there because essentially I think it's the largest lake on Titan is actually called Kraken. So you can tell there's a lot of geeks in space exploration. This one is really cool. This is you'll see it here in a second. This is kind of more of a computer science-esque project that got funded through NIAC. This is essentially a concept for if you send a lunar rover or a rover to the moon and it works off of solar power, how can that rover essentially navigate each day and night on the moon while not touching any shadows? So it's sort of like a video game where this little rover is going around trying to at all costs, and it calculate a route around the moon so that you can explore as much of the moon as possible without having a shadow, and thus not having to turn off your rover if it only works off of solar power. This is really useful if people want to use kind of cheaper technologies to send them to the moon. This is also a rover concept. This is the TENSEGRITY robot. This is a concept for a rover that is more flexible and can sort of bounce around and explore planetary objects in more flexible, bounce around and explore, bouncy, flexible, almost toy-like way. And I think projects like these are kind of always fascinating because you see things like Curiosity rover or Opportunity rover. Essentially, we have all these rovers that are exploring Mars and some of them the moon, and they all kind of look the same. They're, they've got wheels, they've got a little head, they're adorable, but they're not necessarily the only way to explore all these places. Some people have been looking into rovers that work more like tumbleweeds. So if you could imagine a rover going across the surface of Mars, much like a tumbleweed would go across the surface of the Earth, that's another concept that some people have been working on. And I think this is just an area where I get frustrated because a lot of kids will often look at rovers like Curiosity and say, cool, I want to make something like that. And they're told, oh, yeah, you can create something. And that's not really that interesting to me. What's more interesting to me is telling them you can create a rover that can actually work a lot better than a lot of the rovers that have been made. Just because NASA has created a lot of rovers in a specific style, in a specific way, doesn't mean that's the only way to explore places like Mars. Another project from NIAC is this one that does 3D lunar cave mapping. And it's hard to see in this sort of still, but essentially this is a concept for being able to see past walls. So as you can see in this setup, you've got a mannequin that's behind a wall, and there's a laser that's actually shooting photons at the opposite wall from it. And those photons actually bounce off of the mannequin and bounce off of the different surfaces. And then a camera, a highly specialized camera, can actually track at the rate at which those photons bounce back into the camera and draw, as you can see in the bottom right, structure of what is behind the corner. So this is actually really cool because this was developed by MIT Media Lab. I don't think it was developed with a space exploration application in mind, but a group of people want to actually put it onto a spacecraft and use it to sort of map lunar caves and really be able to see what's inside of them. So NIAC is actually open to anyone to apply to, and actually I think they accept applications every October. And to apply, you really only have to start with giving them a white paper of what your idea is, and that's kind of how you start out. And then if you make it to the next round, you can actually get funding to do research and development around different ideas that might be applicable to future space programs. So, lots of space. Need to breathe. Unlike in space where you can't really breathe, but okay. But the project that's most favorite and near and dear to my heart, I can't pick favorites, but this one is definitely my most heartwarming project, is Science Hack Day. Science Hack Day is a 48-hour event in which scientists, designers, developers, and anyone gets together in the same physical space to see what they can rapidly prototype with science in 24 consecutive hours. The mission of Science Hack Day is really just to get excited and make things with science. So you can make something silly, you can make something serious, doesn't really matter. It's just whatever excites you. So this is an image of what the San Francisco Science Hack Day was like last year. We held it at GitHub. I organized the one in San Francisco, and then I also help people organize them around the world. They're just very lovely, awesome events. A few that I've been to around the world have been in Nairobi. Chicago had one at the Adler Planetarium, which was pretty awesome. Last year, I got to travel to Medellin in Colombia, Shanghai, and also to Antananarivo in Madagascar. And they are totally really geeky there, which was always cool to see. So to me, like this quote from John Peel is actually really applicable to Science Hack Day, that at the heart of anything good, there should be a kernel of something undefinable. And if you can define it or claim to be able to define it, then in a sense, you've missed the point. So some of the undefinable things that have come out of Science Hack Days have been things like this. This is essentially a typeface someone wanted to create in which all the letters would have equal wind drag. I don't know why. But so what you're looking at here is actually a makeshift wind tunnel. And they actually recorded the wind drag of each individual letter and then weighted each individual letter so all the letters would have equal wind drag. So if you want a typeface in which all of the letters have equal wind drag, it looks something like this. Again, I don't know why it was created, but this was a physicist who was playing with typography, which I love. Science Hack Day isn't something where, you know, scientists are the experts and everyone else learns from them. It's completely not that. Everyone's playing, everyone's learning new things and experimenting with things, and it's just experimenting with things around whatever you want, like creating a wind drag typeface. Another project, actually, Nathan is putting his head in his hands because this was his very first project at Science Hack Day, but I made him do it. This was essentially a lamp that would light up every time an asteroid flew by the Earth. So it was sort of like a near-death lamp. There's actually a Twitter feed called Low Flying Rocks that already takes the data feed of when asteroids fly near the Earth, which is actually fairly often. And so you can actually hook up a lamp to that data feed, and you know, it can turn on and make a sound, and you can freak out your coworkers and dive under your desk and you know, have fun with it that way. Another weird fun hack was DNACery. This was essentially a cocktail of extracted strawberry DNA. So you can actually extract DNA fairly simply, but sometimes it requires using materials that aren't all edible. So someone created an all edible recipe so that you can extract DNA, strawberry DNA, and actually drink it. So what you can actually see here is the long polymers of DNA clumping together in this concoction. This is actually on Instructables in case you want to try and recreate it yourself, but it tastes disgusting. It's very alcoholic, extremely alcoholic. Yeah, it's gross. But if you want to try it, you can. Another hack that came out, this one was more recent. This was called Satellite Symphony. And what this hack did is you can go in and you can type any location around the Earth, and it'll tell you what satellites are currently overhead at any given point. But what it does is that it actually puts those satellites, the music based they are and how fast they're flying, how fast they're orbiting. And what I thought was kind of cool about this is that, you're usually at work or home, and you can usually hear the cars outside and get a sense of how congested it is outside, how much traffic there is at any given time. You get this sort of ambient awareness, but you don't really have that ambient awareness for the stuff that's overhead at any given time. So that's sort of at any given time listed. And I got to it that I'll just play briefly. Okay, a little too loud. You get the idea. This hack was also from a few months ago. This one was essentially, this was actually just the prototype of people created a robot dinosaur dance party that would use LiDAR to detect when everyone else was dancing, and when everyone else was dancing, the dinosaurs would dance. I wish I had like a good video of it because I'm not doing it justice. But mostly, the thing that I love about Science Hack Day is that you can create things out of cardboard, you can create things out of software or wetware or all these different things. It doesn't really matter. Any fidelity level is fine. Another cool hack that was created is one called the Interactive Planetarium. This was essentially a planetarium, but instead of sitting back and observing all the stars ahead of you, this used Kinect so that you could actually explore the planetarium with your hands and your feet and get a sense of the distance between stars. So as you would explore different parts of this planetarium, you would get information about the stars and what they did. This was also cool because it later became sort of a temporary exhibit at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. And so a bunch of kids got to play with it and have fun with it. And actually just this weekend, I saw an astronaut was playing with it. So my day was made. That was really awesome. One of the weirdest hacks, I think, from Science Hack Day was one where a group of hackers wanted to experiment with simulating synesthesia. And so synesthesia is something where your senses get crossed. So some people with synesthesia report associating certain colors with certain letters, or if they hear a loud sound, they might actually see a ripple across their vision. There's actually a lot of different types of synesthesia. And so what this group of science hackers did is they created synesthesia. Probably one of the creepiest hacks out of Science Hack Day. Oh, sorry about that. Creepiest hack out of Science Hack Day. So what this mask does is it simulates a type of synesthesia. And so how it does this is they took a bunch of vibrating speakers and they taped a bunch of vibrating speakers to someone's face. And then they stayed up all night sewing together a mask. Supposedly, and they could find for a GIMP mask, and that's why it's so creepy. I don't know if that's true or just their excuse, but so they sewed together this mask and they sewed in all the vibrating speakers, and then they wired it all up to an Arduino and a webcam. And so as someone navigates different parts of the room, and different parts of the room are lighter or darker, different parts of their face start vibrating. So in this sense, you can begin to feel sight. One of the cool outcomes that came from this hack was after we had someone contact us who wanted to create essentially a bodysuit for a relative of his who was a toddler who had severe brain damage and was trying to learn how to crawl. And they wanted to create a more sort of tactile bodysuit to sort of help his, I think it was his nephew, learn to crawl. So things like that are always really interesting ways in which collaborations can kind of emerge, and what someone prototypes as sort of a weird thing might actually be insight for someone building something completely different. But my this is my favorite hack. If I didn't say that to the other ones, but this was a hack. Someone wanted to create a beard detector. So someone wanted to create essentially a device that would detect when they needed to shave. And again, I don't know why. I guess some people need more help than others. But what they did is they took a USB microscope like this one, and they held it up to their face, and they got this really gross image of all the stubble on their face. I hope you all enjoyed your pizza. And so they got this gross image and they wrote some basic code and they used an open computer vision library. And then you can see here that they got a beard detector. It says no beard found, no beard found. And then it's drawing lines around the stubble it sees and it detects the beard. So when I first saw this hack demoed, I thought it was amusing, but I wasn't quite sure what it had to do with science. But, Science Hack Day is kind of chaotic. We leave it very open-ended. We don't have challenges or anything like that. It was an amusing hack, but sitting in the audience and seeing this hack demoed was a particle physicist. And when the particle physicist saw this hack demoed, he said to himself, wow, that's actually a genius way for how to detect cosmic rays in a cloud chamber. Cosmic rays and ridiculous until you see what cosmic rays in a cloud chamber looks like. And so following Science Hack Day, this particle physicist wrote an entire proposal for how to detect cosmic rays in a cloud chamber using the original code and open computer vision library someone had used to detect if they needed to shave or not. So this is what I love so much about, Science Hack Day and hacking in general and playing with space exploration and everything, is that it's really about creating sparks for future ideas and future collaborations and just future awesome stuff. Now, with that said, time to get serious with you all. I am in Portland. I love Portland, and there has not been a Science Hack Day in Portland, and I would like to come back to Portland for a Science Hack Day. So, Science Hack Day is completely open. It's not an organization. Anyone can create a Science Hack Day, and all it really needs is a group of people to take the lead on it. I say this specifically with all seriousness to Portland because I showed you just a bunch of really weird hacks, but I think you guys can create even weirder things. I know you have it in you. So I hope the next time I'm here, it's for that. So with that, thank you very much.